Do 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 do.
Good job, pal.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Movie Nights with Marcos and Paulina.
Marcos and Paulina.
Tonight we wanted to talk about Borat, subsequent movie film, or the full title, Delivery of Prodigious Bride to America Regime for Make Benefit Once Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. That was it. Got it in one shot.
Nice.
Anyways, movie's rated R. It's on Amazon Prime, came out in October, and we felt like pretty polarized on our opinions.
Pretty polarized. Yeah, I think we're normally pretty polarized when it comes to movies like this that venture into that ridiculous comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't stand him. And even having said that, it's not that I hated it, but when I try to think about things that I liked about it, I can't. And all I can think about is, oh, that was annoying.
Well, I
liked
liked it.
Maybe I did. And Marcos is like, oh, this is so funny.
Well, I thought it was more interesting than it was funny, but let me give a synopsis.
I thought it was boring.
Okay.
I felt like I could fall asleep.
We're going to get into it.
Okay.
Why don't you describe the film?
Okay. So it's following Borat after he returns home to Kazakhstan after the first film. He is forced into a gulag, so they're punishing him. Don't really remember why, but he's punished by his country. He's embarrassed by them, and he's in this gulag. And when they finally decide to release him, it's because they want to prove themselves to McDonald Trump, which is what Borat calls him. And in order to do that, he is going to deliver their prized porn star monkey to them. So they're preparing him for the journey. They inject him with gypsy tears in order to protect him on his journey. And before he leaves for America, he goes to see his family, and he discovers that he has this daughter named Tudor. And so then he leaves for the United States and with this monkey, and they take separate transportation. It doesn't matter, but he's leaving to deliver this monkey to the president of the United States, more specifically Mike Pence, because he had shit in front of a Trump Tower in New York in
Borat
the first
did.
movie. Yeah, Borat did. So they're delivering the monkey to Mike Pence. Well, come to discover that when he arrives in the United States and finally meets with the monkey again, they open the crate and there's his daughter, who's covered in the blood from the monkey because she ate the monkey and decided to come to the United States instead. So that's kind of the premise of the movie. So as soon as Tudor is discovered by Borat, his mission changes from delivering the monkey to Mike Pence to delivering his daughter as this kind of like bride gift to Mike Pence.
Yeah, good synopsis. So let me just describe why I like the movie, and then you can get into why you didn't like it so much.
Okay.
So I really like movies that are different. And it just fascinates me the way that this movie got made, that they had convinced people that Borat would stay with them for a few days. He convinced a babysitter to take care of Tutar, and they are basically describing like a fake life that like, oh, we're going to sell you to Mike Pence. And the babysitter's like, what? But she's like also nice about it. And I love seeing reactions from people like that are so natural, especially when they're in awkward situations. Like that one scene when he's getting a new phone and one of the guys that's selling him the phone is teaching him about the internet, and he figures out how to Google
how to cast a screen to a TV.
And then he starts looking at porn. And then, like, you get a guy who's in, like, an uncomfortable position. I just love those.
Trying to be polite. And
yeah. I just love those, like, natural reactions that you don't get in real life. Or, like, in other movies, I mean. So that's one positive I like. But why don't you go into why you didn't like it as much?
So, like I mentioned, I just don't like movies that are too ridiculous. So a few other movies that Marcos loves that I don't love because they're too ridiculous are Nacho Libre.
Great movie.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Great movie.
Even TV shows like SpongeBob. I was not a fan of SpongeBob as a kid. I think I'm just too serious. I'm too serious for these kinds of movies. I love comedies. I really do. But when it falls under this kind of realm of just it feels like cheap humor to me to just always be shocking people. Like, for example, in the movie, there's this scene where Borat and his daughter are at this, what is it called?
Debutante.
A debutante ball. So this is the coming out of the woman, right? Of women. And they do this dance and they end up showing, like, she shows everyone her underwear area and it's all covered in blood because she's like on her period. And it's supposed to be this cultural thing, you know, of their made up culture. But it's disgusting. It's not funny. It's just ridiculous looking at these people's reactions. Of course, they're extremely uncomfortable. And I just think it's gross. It's not funny. It's just this, oh my gosh, so ridiculous. Let's show her crotch to everyone and see how they react that it's covered in blood.
Yeah, I was definitely uncomfortable during that scene. And is one of like the probably least favorite aspects of the movie is that it can definitely make you feel so uncomfortable in a lot of scenes. So yeah, that wasn't my favorite scene. I think what I like more about it are the less, maybe like almost interviewee. I like the more interviewee parts where maybe they're just one-on-one with a cake lady and they're like, oh, you know, what do you want on your cake? And Borat's saying something ridiculous like, oh, like to Jews or something like that. Something ridiculous that no one should say yes to. And then they're just being polite about it like, oh, yeah. And he always puts them in a way that they have to almost seem enthusiastic. Like he'll high five everyone.
Yeah, that is a really good point. That his body language and his words don't match. So, and he has the accent. So there are these ridiculous things that people say that you're like, oh my gosh, how could anybody high five him for that? But it's like, what if they didn't hear him? Or what if they're trying to be polite? But there is that aspect that his body language and what he's saying doesn't always match. And it's kind of, that is funny.
Yeah. I think if you were to say like he has a lot of cheap shots, some of his cheaper shots are definitely him saying like, oh, don't you agree that like
we should kill the Jews or stuff like that.
How many girls should fit in this cage? 3? High five. You know, that's like a summary of what he would say. It's not actually what was said, but yeah, I can see where you think he has some cheap shots. I also remember you saying earlier that you thought the movie was boring.
I did think it wasn't interesting.
Why? So it was either gross or uninteresting, or was it both gross and like
it was both?
Okay.
So, and the reason I say it wasn't interesting was because, and this was a big problem for me. So Borat, the first Borat, I could actually, that was funnier to me. Even though it was still ridiculous, I don't think I'd watch it again. But I did, you know, it was interesting to me the first time I watched it. But the problem with the second one was that they couldn't do as much as they could with the first one because at this point people recognized Borat. So he had to start wearing ridiculous costumes, which I also thought was a cheap shot at humor, that he's just in this ridiculously and obviously fake costume.
Well, it's just that much more interesting when people believe him, I thought.
Yeah, I don't think they believe him. That's the thing. I don't believe, like, you kind of talk about it as if all of it's real, and I don't.
I think the reactions
I'm sure
are real.
There's lots of editing, and I'm sure he had to visit a lot of different people and got a lot of different reactions and kept the ones that were like borderline funny. So, but then, so the other aspect of this, so because they couldn't do as many things that included more people because of the danger of people recognizing him, they leaned a lot more into the actual story of Borat and his daughter. And almost trying to develop, I mean, not almost, they were developing their characters and developing their relationship. And it's just not an interesting story.
Yeah, I thought the worst parts of the movie were when it's just Borat and Tudor, and
yeah, they were so boring, and those were a lot parts. That was a big part of the movie of them just sitting in a field at night, her in her cage and him in the truck,
or like him by himself looking at the daughter's handbook manual from their country. Yeah. It's like I would rather see another scene with like real people and another crazy situation And I felt like the first one had a lot more interviews with specific people, like a feminist or a joke person teaching him jokes, than in this one. So I can agree with you there. What I did like about the movie, and I'm not sure what you have to say about it, but I felt like there was a lot of like positivity with America. You might have a lot of these different people, like there were two people that Borat stays with. He asked to stay with them because the COVID... These two men, yeah. It was the COVID pandemic was just hitting, and he's pretending like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. All the stores are closed. Can I just stay with you? And
this guy takes him in and lets him stay with him and his friend or roommate. Mm-hmm. And they're these QAnon guys. So ultra conservative. I mean, at that point, it's not really even conservative. It's
they're conspiracy theorists,
right? What are they called?
Alt-right.
Alt-right. Yeah, I think QAnon guys are like alt-right. So
I don't know the official like labeling.
I think that's what it is.
But even though you're like led to believe that they're crazy and conspiratorial,
and they bond over these like ridiculous opinions.
They definitely like cared for him. I read somewhere that these people weren't in on the act. They actually thought that Borat was a real person, and they had
a foreigner.
A foreigner, yeah. And they just let this guy into their home for 5 days because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. They even helped him like reunite with his daughter, which is the story that he gave them, that he needed to reunite with his daughter.
I thought that was great. And
that is great. Yeah.
There are other scenes, like there's a babysitter that is trying to convince Tutor to not go with Mike Pence, to not be like basically delivered as a bride. I also like that there was a babysitter that's trying to convince Tutar to not be delivered to Mike Pence and to, develop your own thinking. And it just seemed kind of wholesome to me. And I know she was also not in on the act. There are also the two Jewish ladies that Borat's pretending that he's anti-Semitic, and he saw this Facebook post that the Holocaust was fake. And they're just two nice Jewish ladies at a synagogue trying to explain to him like, oh, I went through it.
Him.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't like try to find an argument, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's
like
true.
Today,
there was this like theme of unity.
Mm-hmm. And if you're on the internet, you probably can find a lot of cases where people are arguing over the smallest things or over big things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of found it shocking that the movie would lead you to think like, oh, we're actually more united than we seem. Which I think is hopeful.
True. And I actually expected them to be more... Well, especially after in the first one, you kind of expect them to just paint Americans as stupid and divided and racist and anti-Semitic. And I think you're right that even though they did show a lot of ridiculousness about that, there was this kind of overall theme of we're all human and we connect with each other, and that's a beautiful thing. I don't necessarily know if that was on purpose or if that's just our interpretation of it.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Especially, Marcos, you're a very positive person when it comes to people's intentions. Marcos is incredibly positive in that way, and I am not. So I look at it like
it was a happy accident. Maybe.
Yeah, like it was a happy accident that happened.
That makes sense. I'm going to keep with my interpretation.
That it was on purpose.
Americans are good. We're good people. The movie might say that we can be dumb people, but at least we're good, right?
Well, I don't know if they're saying good, but I think it was interesting that a lot of the reactions you could chalk up to, rather than that we're dumb or stupid or
I think I know what you're trying to say. Like, we can be accommodating.
Yeah, we can be accommodating and polite. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because to the point that if you feel like you have to be so polite that you're agreeing with anti-Semitic remarks or writing something anti-Semitic on a cake, that's a problem. But if you're in this conversation with someone who's a foreigner and you're trying to understand what they're saying and you're listening to not only what they're saying, but their body language, and kind of matching their excitedness when they say ridiculous things. Maybe part of that is just your inclination to wanting them to feel comfortable, wanting them to feel accepted, and feeling the need to be polite. And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing to want to
I actually
be polite.
think if I was in a situation like the people in this movie, I think I would probably do something that would look dumb on camera.
Yeah, I can easily see myself. And that's why maybe I feel bad for those people that get caught on camera doing that, because I can easily see myself not understanding what he's saying, and like going off of his body language. And then I ended up maybe later realizing what he said and being like, oh my gosh, that's happened to me so many times. I mean, not with outrageous statements like what he would say in the movie, but me responding wrong because I misheard someone and thinking about it for the rest of the day. So
something that I think about a lot is, how did he convince so many people to say, yeah, you can show my face in this movie?
Yes.
Because there are some blurred faces, so you know that he didn't get permission.
Yeah.
But how does he phrase it in a way where like, oh yeah, you're gonna look dumb in my movie, but do you want to be in it? And I don't think there's ever like an article, or I've never read anything that says this is how we do the process. I'd be so interested to see how they got.
Well, I'm sure they don't want to share that.
Well, yeah, of course, because then like everyone would figure it out. But
well, and maybe it shows some parts of the movie that are not as organic as you think they are.
You think so?
I really think so. It's like, as hearing you talk about it, it's like you think that's all raw footage.
I'm sure they took a lot of takes. I heard there was a lot of filming in the first one to get it right. But there were a lot of lawsuits that happened. I don't know if you remember, in the first movie, there's a group of frat guys that pick up Borat, and he starts asking him like the dumbest questions, like, should we still have slaves? Should women be slaves?
Oh my gosh.
They're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And they're just like frat guys who are drunk. They definitely sued.
Oh, wow.
Those were like genuine reactions.
Yeah.
I'm so curious to see how many people sue, and I think that might be an indicator of how real a lot of the footage was, maybe.
Well, there was this part of an Instagram influencer giving advice to Tudor, and Tudor saying,
what's a sugar mom?
What's a sugar baby? What's a sugar baby? And then the influencer's kind of asking her what kind of guy she's interested in. And Tudor says, well, the kind that will die fast. And the influencer laughs and says, yeah,
get a heart attack.
Get a guy who's had a heart attack, or and she said, I like that. And that influencer, apparently, once the movie came out, she was like, I too have watched the movie, and I love that I was able to stay in character just like Tudor.
I bet she didn't know.
So she's saying, well, that's what I wonder. You know, it's like, did she know it was a thing? Did she not know? If she did know, then that makes that scene a lot less interesting and a lot less funny to me.
That's true.
But that's what I mean. Like, and I think that genuinely bothers me. What's true? What's not true? If you're going to make this mockumentary, I just hate that. I hate not knowing what is actually a reaction, especially when it's like thrown or trying to be posed as an authentic reaction.
You know what is probably, it's probably hard to tell what the truth or reality was, but the Rudy Giuliani scene.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of...
So that's like toward the end of it, pretty much the end of the movie.
Yeah, I think it's like the climax.
They couldn't get to Pence, but they got to Giuliani.
They got very far from
a lot less busy.
But I think that might be like closer to real, because like there's a lot of controversy, and Rudy Giuliani, like I've seen like him posting.
He tweeted.
Yeah, like, this is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah.
I was just taking off my microphone.
Yeah, but it looks like pretty bad in my opinion.
So basically Giuliani is doing this interview with Tudor. Tudor is posing as a journalist, and it ends with her and him in a hotel room where the interview is taking place. But
for some reason he goes to his bed to take off the microphone.
Well, it seems like it did look like the microphone was like in his like tucked in his shirt. I don't know how that works. It did look like that was the placement of the microphone, and that's what he's saying. He's saying like, oh, I was just taking off my microphone. But even though it did look like that's where the microphone is, it definitely looked like he was also excited to do something sexual with her.
Yeah.
There was no one else in the room.
Except the guy recording.
Oh.
There was a guy recording, so that's what makes me think it wasn't.
I totally forgot about that. There's a guy recording.
Yeah.
I don't believe. Are you kidding me? Giuliani, unless he's super stupid. I really honestly don't know a whole lot about him other than that he's Trump's lawyer and says a lot of stupid shit about Trump. But would he really, I mean, in that level of power, that level of fame, that level of being around press, would he really be stupid enough to do something like that on camera with the cameraman in the room?
I don't think so, but
no way.
It still looks
was there really a cameraman? What if they just hid a camera?
I don't know.
What
but
if he thought the camera was off?
What made me think like it might be more genuine is that the second Borat like breaks into the room to like see what's going on.
Yeah, Giuliani freaked out.
Yeah, he like immediately gets up. He's like, okay, what's going on? And then he like tries to get away.
But also like someone's bursting into a room.
Well, that's true. So it
I
probably.
don't know. See, I don't like that. I don't like the gotcha journalism.
Yeah.
That's fake journalism. Who like you're publishing that and possibly ruining people's lives and delivering something that is supposedly that maybe a lot of people believe. And it just doesn't feel like anyone should take that seriously, but I can see people taking that seriously and being like, oh, Giuliani is a molester. Like, those QAnon guys said all this awful. I mean, it was awful, the things that they said. It was awful. I'm not trying to defend them.
Yeah, I think if like there's someone who's looking for a confirmation bias about Rudy Giuliani, then you're gonna get it in this movie. But if you're just like probably a critical thinker and thinking, okay, how exactly did this situation happen? You're probably gonna leave the movie thinking that was like very staged and a lot of clips were put together and he probably didn't do anything wrong. It still looks bad though.
Well, and so basically, honestly, I feel like you can only enjoy this movie if you don't give a shit. You're not looking for confirmation bias. You're not thinking critically about it. And you're just looking for some laughs that are just unexpected. So if you just enjoy laughing at the ridiculous, laughing at the unexpected, like you said, you really enjoyed that this movie was different. So if you're that kind of viewer, you will enjoy the movie. If you're someone who's looking for a deeper message, looking to see how this is a reflection of America, an accurate reflection, or, if you're going to take any part of this movie seriously, stay far away.
From this movie? Would
be my advice. Stay far away from this movie.
I think there are glimpses of what America is. Like, I think the first Borat was trying to very much get into that. This is what America looks like at this point in time. But yeah. So what would you give the movie? What rating would you give it yourself?
I think I would give it a C.
A C.
Because...
Minus? Plus? 75?
No, a C. Because what did I give Yes, God, Yes? A C minus?
Yeah. You think it's worse than Yes, God, Yes?
No, a C minus is worse than a C.
You think it's better?
Oh, shoot. C minus then.
Are you too afraid to give it a D plus?
I mean, I don't think it was a D. You know what? Yeah, because Yes, God, Yes at least was entertaining to some extent. Borat, too, I was so uninterested for most of it. So yeah, you know what? F.
Wow.
F for Borat, too.
I was more bored in Yes, God, Yes than I was in this movie. So
well, I believe that.
Yeah. So I would give this one a 3.5 out of 5.
I would say watch this movie if you're with your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, significant other, whatever, and you guys have no idea what to watch and you want a movie that you can be on Instagram at the same time.
And your significant other is okay with you being on
that
your phone.
You're both on Instagram.
Okay.
You're both on Twitter or whatever.
Sure.
You're both scrolling your phones and you have this movie on.
I was not doing that.
So that you can occasionally look up and see.
But you were doing that a little bit.
I was. Yeah.
That's fair. I liked it more than you, but obviously I prefer different kinds of movies. I generally like movies that are, I don't like that they're super inappropriate, but I tend to tolerate movies that have inappropriate scenes or gross scenes more than you.
No, there are a lot of inappropriate movies
Inappropriate comedy movies.
No. Inappropriate comedy, I actually guiltily really do like.
So you don't think
it's ridiculous comedies?
Ridiculous.
Because Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is
ridiculous.
Not inappropriate. It's ridiculous.
That's
Nacho
true.
Libre is not inappropriate. It's ridiculous.
It's a great movie is what it is.
Inappropriate comedies like The Hangover.
You like The Heat.
Yeah, but that one's not really inappropriate either, other than language. I'm trying to think of some that are like really... Oh, Bridesmaids, kind of. I mean, I love all those. I do like those.
That's fair.
So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Defending my guilty pleasure.
I guess if you like ridiculous movies, I recommend this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to be the next movie? I think we said Little
Emma
Women.
or Little Women, because I want to do one that I actually love. So
let's do Little Women. I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Well, thank you for watching, and
Thank you. Okay.
All right, great ending.
By the way, I don't actually sing, guys. I don't want you to think that I actually think I'm a good singer. I'm actually tone deaf.
She's better than you think.